All right, today for my second Think Aloud, I'm going to be reading the beginning of the Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, one of my favorite authors, and I absolutely love this book. Now today we're going to be focusing on how a character actually drives the plot. So because of a specific character, things happen for a reason. And because of the way a character reacts to certain situations, the plot continues and it changes. So, chapter 1. How nobody came to the graveyard. There was a hand in the darkness, and it held a knife. The knife had a handle of polished black bone, and a blade finer and sharper than any razor. If it sliced you, you might not even know you had been cut, not immediately. All right, so I noticed how the knife must belong to a person who meticulously cares for his or her belongings because it's so sharp. I know that my knives become dull over time, and in order to make sure that they stay sharp, they have to be sharpened. So this person takes really good care to keep his knife so sharp. The knife had done almost everything it was brought to do to that house to do, and both the blade and the handle were wet. I wonder who owns this knife. The street door was still open, just a little, where the knife and the man who held it had slipped in, and wisps of nighttime mist slithered and twined into the house through the open door. All right, so because of the emphasis on the darkness and the mist and it being at night, and he has a task that he's doing, I bet this is not a good person. The man Jack, oh look, I learned his name, so I know his name's Jack, paused on the landing. With his left hand, he pulled a large white handkerchief from the pocket of his black coat, and with it he wiped off the knife in his gloved right hand, which had been holding it. Then he put the handkerchief away. The hunt was almost over. He had left the woman in her bed, the man on the bedroom floor, the older child in her brightly colored bedroom, surrounded by toys and half-finished models. That only left the little one, a baby, barely a toddler, to take care of. One more, and his task would be done. All right, so I'm noticing that I'm receiving some information that already happened. So it's almost kind of like we have to backtrack a little bit. So what I'm noticing is right now, we are right here where he's cleaning his knife. But before that, the mother died in the bed, and then the father was on the floor of the bedroom, and then the daughter in her brightly colored room, and then cleaning his knife, and now he's looking for the toddler. So notice that this story is being told out of order, and so that's an interesting thing that the author is doing. All right. So, one more and his task would be done. He flexed his fingers. The man Jack was, above all things, a professional, or so he told himself, and he would not allow himself to smile until the job was completed. I can infer that because Jack considers himself a professional, he was probably hired to complete this job. He's probably being paid to kill this family. So because he's probably a professional assassin of some sort, that actually is driving the plot forward and creating the story through this conflict. So I make a note of that. And I also think about how he's so careful and so meticulous that he's very good at doing this. And so that makes sure that everything is very efficiently done. His hair was dark and his eyes were dark, and he wore black leather gloves of the thinnest lambskin. The toddler's room was at the very top of the house. The man Jack walked up the stairs, his feet silent on the carpeting. Then he pushed open the attic door and he walked in. His shoes were black leather, and they were polished to such a shine that they looked like dark mirrors. You could see the moon reflected in them, tiny and half full. The real moon shone through the casement window. Its light was not bright, and it was diffused by the mist, but the man Jack would not need much light. The moonlight was enough. It would do. He can make out the shape of the child in the crib, head and limbs and torso. The crib had high, slatted sides to prevent the child from getting out. Jack leaned over, raised his right hand, one holding the knife. He aimed for the chest, and then he lowered his hand. The shape in the crib was a teddy bear. There was no child. The man Jack's eyes were accustomed to dim moonlight, so he had no desire to turn on an electric light. And light was not that important after all. He had other skills. The man Jack sniffed the air. He ignored the scents that had come into the room with him, dismissed the scents that he could safely ignore, honed in on the smell of the thing he had come to find. He could smell the child, a milky smell like chocolate chip cookies, and the sour tang of a wet, disposable nighttime diaper. He could smell the baby shampoo in its hair, and something small and rubbery. A toy, he thought, and then, no, something to suck that the child had been carrying. The child had been here. It was here no longer. The man Jack followed his nose down the stairs to the middle of the tall, thin house. He inspected the bathroom, the kitchen, the airing cupboard, and finally the downstairs hall in which there was nothing to be seen but the family's bicycles, a pile of empty shopping bags, a fallen diaper, and the stray tendrils of fog that had insinuated themselves into the hall from the open door to the street. The man Jack made a small noise then, a grunt that contained in it both frustration and also satisfaction. He slipped the knife into its sheath in the inside pocket of his long coat, and he stepped out into the street. There was moonlight, and there were streetlights, but the fog stifled everything, muted light and muffled sound, and made the night shadowy and treacherous. He looked down the hill towards the light of the closed shops, then up the street where the last high houses wound up the hill on their way to the darkness of an old graveyard. The man Jack sniffed the air. Then, without hurrying, he began to walk up the hill. You know, I've heard often how time is money, so the job is worth less if more time is used. I know that he will quickly finish his search, remaining professional to wrap up his assignment. You know, I really worry about the little toddler because this guy obviously has a lot of skills that a baby would not have. I'm also wondering, he's sniffing a lot. And like, why is he using his nose? It's kind of weird that he can track the little boy or the child just by nose and scent. That's almost like a bloodhound or a dog. It's very strange, so I'm wondering about that. All right, so anyways, we'll continue our reading tomorrow, and I look forward to hearing about what you guys are reading and how you notice things about a character and their reactions that move the plot and move the story forward.